On January 8, 2012, Daisy Coleman, then just 14 years old, woke up outside her house, lying in the freezing snow. The temperature had plummeted to 0 degrees Fahrenheit. Her hair was frozen to the icy ground, and she was barely conscious. She wore only a t-shirt and athletic pants, and her mind was a blur. Her first thought was haunting. Am I dead? Daisy Coleman seemed like the picture-perfect teenager, talented, intelligent, and kind-hearted. But what most people didn't see was the storm of pain and trauma she carried beneath her radiant smile. Her life was filled with immense promise, but also deep tragedy, beginning with a series of events that reshaped her family and led to a heartbreaking story that would later shock the world. Hello, friends. Welcome to the True Crime Record. Subscribe now to stay updated with our latest true crime stories. Come find out as we explore this high-profile case. Today we will talk about the Coleman family murders. Daisy Coleman was born on March 30th, 1997, in the small town of Albany, Missouri. Her father, Michael, was a doctor, and her mother, Melinda, a veterinarian. Daisy was the second of 4 children in a lively and loving household. Alongside her 3 brothers, she grew up surrounded by love and laughter. In 2009, however, tragedy struck the Coleman family. While traveling to a wrestling tournament, Daisy, her father Michael, and one of her brothers were involved in a devastating car accident. Their car struck an obstacle and plunged into a ravine. Michael, the family's pillar, tragically lost his life. After Michael's death, the family relocated to Maryville, Missouri, seeking a fresh start. Melinda took on the difficult role of raising her 4 children alone while grappling with her own grief. The move to Maryville was meant to symbolize new beginnings, but it would instead set the stage for unimaginable trials. On January 8, 2012, Daisy Coleman, then just 14 years old, woke up outside her house, lying in the freezing snow. The temperature had plummeted to 0 degrees Fahrenheit. Her hair was frozen to the icy ground, and she was barely conscious. She wore only a t-shirt and athletic pants, and her mind was a blur. Her first thought was haunting. Am I dead? Unable to call out for help, Daisy mustered the strength to crawl to her front door. At around 5 a.m., her mother, Melinda, heard a faint noise. Initially thinking it was their dog scratching at the door, she opened it to a sight that shocked her to her core. Daisy, frozen and barely conscious, lying on the doorstep. Daisy reeked of alcohol and couldn't explain what had happened. She was crying but unable to articulate her pain. Melinda immediately called her sons for help. Together, they carried Daisy inside and tried to warm her up with blankets. However, Melinda noticed something deeply troubling. Daisy's legs were showing signs of frostbite. Using her veterinary training, she carefully warmed Daisy's body in a bathtub, gradually raising the water temperature. As Daisy began to recover physically, bruises and marks on her legs revealed a much darker reality. Alarmed, Melinda called 911. Daisy's best friend Paige, who had been at the Coleman home for a sleepover, recounted the events leading up to that fateful night. On the evening of January 7th, Daisy and Paige planned a cozy night in. They watched movies and sneaked drinks from the family's wine cabinet. Late in the evening, Daisy began texting Matthew Barnett, a 17-year-old soccer player from their high school. Matthew invited Daisy and Paige to his house, messaging, "Hey, want to have some fun at my place?" Around 1 a.m., the girls sneaked out of Daisy's bedroom window to meet Matthew and his friends, who took them to Matthew's house. The boys snuck the girls into the basement through a window to avoid waking Matthew's parents. Once inside, Matthew began giving Daisy drink after drink, while Paige was led to another room by Nicholas Gudis, one of Matthew's friends. Meanwhile, in another room, Daisy was heavily intoxicated, barely able to move or speak. Matthew took advantage of her vulnerability while Jordan Zek, another friend, filmed the encounter on his phone. At around 2 a.m., the boys decided to take the girls home. When they arrived at Daisy's house, Paige got out first. Matthew told her Daisy needed to stay outside to sober up in the cold air. Trusting him, Paige went inside and fell asleep. Matthew and his friends, however, abandoned Daisy outside. They took her shoes, phone, and bag, leaving her alone in the freezing cold. Daisy was left outside for nearly 3 hours, her wet hair freezing solid in the sub-zero temperatures. The investigation begins. After being hospitalized, Daisy underwent medical examinations that revealed bruising and trauma consistent with assault. By the afternoon, police had detained Matthew Barnett, Jordan Zek, and Nicholas Gudis. During questioning, Matthew admitted to having sexual contact with Daisy, but claimed it was consensual. He later admitted to providing Daisy with alcohol. Jordan confessed to filming part of the encounter, but claimed to have deleted the video. Nicholas admitted to his actions with Paige and was sent to juvenile detention. Despite the evidence, charges against Matthew and Jordan were dropped within 2 months. The district attorney cited insufficient evidence. Matthew's family connections, his grandfather, Rex Barnett, was a former state legislator, raised suspicions of favoritism. Daisy faced relentless bullying at school. Her peers branded her a liar and blamed her for the incident. Even Paige distanced herself, and her own home later burned down under suspicious circumstances. The Coleman family eventually moved away, but trouble followed them. Their former home in Maryville was set on fire, and Melinda received anonymous threats. In 2016, Daisy's story gained widespread attention through the Netflix documentary Audrey and Daisy. The film highlighted the impact of violence and cyberbullying, drawing parallels between Daisy's experience and that of another victim, Audrey Pott. Audrey, overwhelmed by public humiliation, tragically took her own life in 2012. Tragedy strikes again. Despite efforts to rebuild her life, Daisy continued to struggle. In 2020, she reported being stalked by an unknown man, but received little help from authorities. On August 4, 2020, Daisy posted troubling messages online about her fears. Later that day, she tragically ended her own life. 4 months later, her mother, Melinda, consumed by grief, also took her own life. A painful legacy. Matthew Barnett moved on with his life, while the Coleman family was left in ruins. Daisy's story serves as a heartbreaking reminder of the long-lasting effects of trauma and the failures of the justice system. Thank you for watching. If you found this story meaningful, please like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments.
In April 2017, a video appeared online showing a young woman with her arms bandaged up to the elbows. She stared intensely at the camera, her youthful appearance contradicting the shocking crime she was accused of. Cassandra wrinkled her nose, poured bleach on the bathroom floor, and prepared the house for a big party. Cleaning the place wasn't easy. It had to look presentable. Her boyfriend, Johnny, helped seal the door frames with a white adhesive to block the smell, making sure no one could detect the odor of 2 bodies upstairs. In the small town of Lawrenceville, Georgia, strange events unfolded over a week. 3 couples in separate homes were attacked, with no signs of forced entry. On April 2, 2017, the first couple was found in their bed with their throats slit. The house was ransacked. 6 days later, on April 8th, the second couple was attacked as they entered their home, sprayed with bear repellent and beaten with metal bats. The next day, a third couple was found bleeding on the bathroom floor, barely alive. Investigators found connections between the couples. The third couple used the second couple's car, and intimate videos of the second pair were on the first couple's phone. Police hoped for answers from Johnny Ryder, 19, and Cassandra Bjorga, 17, once they regained consciousness in the hospital. Cassandra and Johnny were deeply infatuated. To Johnny, Cassandra was perfect, his soulmate. A trained martial artist, Cassandra had given up her practice due to emotional struggles, but her intense personality remained. Despite dating for only a few weeks, Johnny felt like they had been together forever. Police arrived at a suburban home that seemed eerily sealed shut. Inside, the house was in disarray, with cigarette butts, dirty dishes, and moldy food scattered around. Upstairs, they found two bodies: a man, beaten and stabbed in his sleep, and an elderly woman, similarly killed. The couple, Wendy and Randall Bjorga, were Cassandra's grandparents. The day after the bodies were discovered, Johnny sent a chilling voice message to his mom, asking for forgiveness. Shortly after, Johnny and Cassandra were found unconscious in another apartment, having attempted to harm themselves. When Cassandra woke up in the hospital, she initially blamed her depression, but eventually admitted to the crime. She told police how she and Johnny waited for her grandparents to sleep before attacking. Johnny started by beating her grandfather. Cassandra, hearing the noise, struck her grandmother with a crowbar. The couple tied up the grandparents and demanded the safe code. Johnny stabbed her grandfather while Cassandra opened the safe, which contained $1,000. The couple used the money to buy food and party supplies, continuing to live in the house for a week with the bodies upstairs. The couple spent the money recklessly, even using Cassandra's grandmother's bank card when the cash ran out. They invited friends over for a party, masking the smell of decomposition with bleach and sealing the upstairs doors. None of the friends knew about the bodies in the house. Cassandra and Johnny's crime spree didn't stop there. On April 8th, they attacked Johnny's sister, Melissa, and her boyfriend with bear repellent and a baseball bat. Despite their injuries, Melissa and her boyfriend fought back, forcing Johnny and Cassandra to flee in Melissa's car. Eventually, police tracked the couple to a friend's apartment. Surrounded, they tried to harm themselves again, but were arrested. In custody, Cassandra remained emotionless, recounting the crimes in chilling detail. She described her resentment toward her grandparents, who had raised her after removing her from an abusive home. Though they had loved her, Cassandra claimed they had become overbearing. At their trial, Johnny and Cassandra pleaded guilty. They were sentenced to 2 life terms plus 21 years each, with eligibility for parole after 60 years. Many debated whether either would have committed these crimes without the other's influence, though most believed Cassandra was the mastermind. While Johnny expressed remorse, Cassandra showed none. The story ended with her relatives devastated, mourning the betrayal and loss of 2 people who had cared for her deeply. Melissa was kicked in the stomach multiple times, but managed to grab Cassandra's hair and rip out a clump. During this, the attackers kept spraying bear repellent, which mostly hit Melissa and her boyfriend. The struggle continued, with the attackers having the upper hand. It's uncertain what would have happened if Melissa's mom hadn't arrived and opened the front door. The attackers managed to escape through the back, but not before leaving Melissa with severe injuries, requiring 7 stitches and staples for a large gash on her head. Both she and her boyfriend were bruised, and he also had a broken tooth. Shocking was that Melissa didn't even recognize her brother Johnny and his girlfriend Cassandra, whom she'd only met once before. To make matters worse, the couple stole Melissa's car, leaving behind Randall Bjorga's vehicle, which they had initially used and parked in the backyard. Johnny and Cassandra had originally planned to hide in Melissa's home, waiting for family members to return one by one so they could kill them individually. However, they hadn't expected Melissa to return with her boyfriend, nor for Cassandra to drop Randall's car keys during the attack, forcing them to flee in Melissa's car. Later, the lingering bear repellent fumes caused severe irritation for both Johnny and Cassandra. They stopped at a store to buy milk, hoping it would relieve their burning skin. Meanwhile, police visited Melissa's house to take statements and became curious about the car the attackers had used. Checking the plates, officers discovered it belonged to Randall Bjorga. This led them to revisit his house, where they found the crime scene. In custody, Cassandra revealed their plan. First, they killed her grandparents. Next, they intended to kill Johnny's family, who disapproved of their relationship. Cassandra claimed she had issues with her grandparents because they kicked her out for staying out late. She also lived briefly in Johnny's car after leaving home. Although she had thought about killing her mother and stepfather later, Johnny discouraged it, citing the potential risk of encountering weapons at her mother's house. Cassandra's grandparents, Wendy and Randall, had fought to protect her from abuse in her mother's home, even obtaining emergency custody of her. Despite this, Cassandra chose to turn against the people who had saved her. Wendy had been aware of abuse allegations against Cassandra's stepfather and had taken steps to shield her, yet Cassandra felt her grandparents had outlived their purpose. Police noted the living room in Wendy and Randall's house was filled with pictures of Cassandra, showing their love and devotion. Yet Cassandra told police her grandparents no longer showed interest in her and only lectured her. She resented their disapproval of Johnny, and Johnny's family also disliked Cassandra. Together, the couple decided that both families had to die for them to start a new life together. Cassandra and Johnny dreamed of moving to Pensacola, Florida, but their actions suggested little thought about the long-term consequences. After killing Wendy and Randall, they lived in the house for a week, attempting to mask the smell of decomposition. They even invited people over for a party, lying about where her grandparents were. Only 2 guests, who supplied them with weed, came, and neither suspected the truth. Eventually, police traced them to the home of Johnny's old friend, Jason. Surrounded by law enforcement, the couple attempted to harm themselves but were arrested. Cassandra later claimed she and Johnny felt more like Bonnie and Clyde than Romeo and Juliet. At their trial, they both pleaded guilty. Johnny apologized, showing remorse, but Cassandra remained cold and silent. They were sentenced to 2 life terms plus 21 years, eligible for parole only after 60 years. The courtroom and public debated whether either could have committed the crimes alone, with many believing Cassandra was the driving force. Cassandra's betrayal deeply hurt her surviving relatives, who couldn't fathom how someone so loved and protected could commit such heinous acts against her own family. The tragic tale concluded with the unimaginable loss of 2 devoted grandparents.
I'm sorry for what I did, but that's hardly enough.
Well, I think that's the one baffling part of this case, that to this day we can't understand why he committed this mass murder.
Imagine a quiet suburban neighborhood shattered by a gruesome crime. A teenage boy accused of murdering his entire family. What drove him to commit such a chilling act? Was it a dark secret, a hidden rage, or something even more sinister? Stay tuned as we unravel the shocking truth behind this horrifying family tragedy. The Thanksgiving Massacre of 1998, the case of Seth Pravacki. On Thanksgiving Day in 1998, a seemingly ordinary family in Muskegon, Michigan, gathered to celebrate. Linda Pravacki was showering, while her husband, Stephen, was out picking up his father, John. In the living room, their son, Jed, 19, waited for his girlfriend, April, to arrive. Upstairs, however, Seth Pravacki, the family's youngest son at 18, was loading his father's .22 caliber Ruger. When Seth came downstairs, he shot Jed in the head without warning. He then moved to the garage, where he waited for his father and grandfather to return. As they arrived, Seth ambushed them, firing 3 shots. One into his father and 2 into his grandfather. Finally, when his mother emerged from the shower, he shot her as well. Moments later, Jed's girlfriend April arrived at the house. Seth let her in, but when she saw the bodies, she gasped in horror. Seth shot her too, making her his 5th victim. A chilling discovery. The massacre might have gone unnoticed for longer, had April's parents not become concerned when she didn't return home that evening. They drove to the Pravacki residence and discovered the scene of horror. The bodies of the family members, blood everywhere, and a staged attempt to make the crime look like a botched robbery. Police were immediately called. One victim, Seth's grandfather, was lying in the driveway, while the rest were inside. Only one person was unaccounted for: Seth. Investigators quickly identified him as the prime suspect. The manhunt. Seth fled as police arrived. His best friend, Stephen Wallace, who had helped him stage the robbery, was arrested and confessed to Seth's crimes, revealing details of how Seth had methodically killed his family and even called him afterward, saying, "It's done." When the police was searching the house, they saw a boy was hiding in the woods behind the home. It was Stephen Wallace. He made no attempt to flee. He told the police that Seth had just killed his parents. Police launched a manhunt for Seth. Next morning, news of what had taken place at Priviki House spread like wildfire. Seth's father was a teacher at Wath's Puffer Intermediate School. Everybody in town was feeling sad on this tremendous loss. Gianna Simonelli was also a student of Puffer School. That day she was also very disturbed due to this news. It was an awful rainy day. She was driving along Weber Road. She saw a hitchhiker thumbing for a ride in the rain. She stopped the car and stranger sat in. It was Seth, and she knew exactly what he was accused of. She was terrified, but she kept her cool. She acted as if she knew nothing. She dropped the Seth where he asked her to stop. When he left, Janet immediately called the police. Soon the police arrived at the address where the Seth had been dropped of. They discovered him hiding in a barn, shivering from cold and rain. Seth gave himself up to the police without any resistance. After 13 hours on the run, Seth was caught hiding in a barn, thanks to a college student who recognized him as she gave him a ride. Seth surrendered without resistance, but his actions left investigators and the community shocked. The confession and motive. Seth admitted to the murders, but his explanation was unsettlingly vague. He claimed his family was ganging up on him, and his father had recently asked him to move out of the house. Detectives uncovered a history of minor legal trouble, including shoplifting and selling alcohol to minors, which had earned Seth probation. He was also diagnosed with depression and prescribed the antidepressant Wellbutrin. Seth's behavior in custody was chilling. He described his actions calmly, devoid of emotion, as though he were recounting a mundane event. Despite his confession, his motive remained unclear, leaving friends, neighbors, and detectives struggling to understand why he committed such an unthinkable crime. The aftermath. Both Seth and Stephen were charged. Stephen was accused of being an accessory after the fact, but was acquitted in 1999. Seth, however, was sentenced to life in prison without parole after pleading no contest to 5 counts of first-degree murder. In the years following his imprisonment, Seth maintained that he was not a monster, writing letters to the press to refute claims about his character. In one such letter, he claimed to have been under the influence of LSD at the time of the murders, blaming the drug for his actions. However, there was no evidence to confirm this, and his story only deepened the mystery. A tragic end. Seth's time in prison ended tragically. In 2010, at the age of 30, he and 2 fellow inmates attempted an escape by stealing a truck and crashing it through the prison's fences. Guards pursued them, and Seth was shot and killed when he refused to stop running.
Ironically, he died in the same fashion that all 5 of his victims did.
You think of irony, karma, what you sow, so shall you reap.
His death was ironic, as it mirrored the violence he had inflicted on his own family. Unanswered questions. The motive behind Seth Pravaki's actions remains a mystery. His strained relationship with his father, feelings of isolation, and potential substance use may have contributed, but none fully explain his decision to kill his entire family and Jed's girlfriend on Thanksgiving Day. His death at 30 ensured that the full truth of his actions would never be revealed. Conclusion. Seth Pravacki's case is a haunting reminder of how unresolved emotions and untreated issues can spiral into unimaginable tragedy. While the community may never understand what drove him to commit these horrific acts, it's a story that continues to resonate as a warning about the complexities of mental health, family dynamics, and violence.